This podcast is sponsored by PAX. Whether on water, on land or in the air, PAX bags are both versatile and flexible backpacks that are perfectly suitable for your requirements in the most demanding of environments. PAX bags are highly regarded due to their exceptional performance in pre-hospital and in critical care environments. Renowned for their durability, they endure harsh conditions while providing rapid and reliable access to essential kit. So their well-organised compartments and customisable configurations enhance efficiency in high-stress situations. PAX bags are designed with infection control in mind and are easy to clean and disinfect. Their highly visible colours and reflective strips add quick identification and adherence to quality standards, assuring reliability. The versatility of PAX bags caters to a diverse EMS providers, but also delivers vital equipment and durability and ease of use for pre-hospital critical care services globally. I've used PAX bags in a number of critical care situations and they're absolutely excellent. Please see the show notes for further details.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.
Welcome back to the podcast. Happy New Year to everyone who's listening to this on what would be now the 2nd of January. And this episode is going to be the third in a three-part series on surviving cardiac arrest with Noah and Erran. They give their really personal and indeed visceral stories of their first-hand experience of cardiac arrest. And it does really hammer home both the importance of getting the patient perspective, but also them piecing the puzzle together retrospectively as to some of the intricacies and indeed the relationships. So Noah went on to meet the teacher, which gave him fantastic CPR initially, and throughout the chain of survival really. So I've got to know Noah, as have a number of other clinicians, and it really helps. It's helped me, but it also helps the survivor, and I hope that really comes through in this episode as well. So as we move into 2025, we're going to look at a number of different episodes really. We'll look at how we improve cardiac arrest survival rates. We'll look at new algorithms for traumatic cardiac arrest. We'll look at some physiology and indeed some pathology-based episodes to really deep dive on some difficult pathology that presents itself within pre-hospital care. We're also going to do mini-series and we're going to do one pediatric, geriatric, medical legal, and we're also going to do an AI mini-series as well, just to really deep dive on some of the intricacies that these patient groups and concepts throw up in pre-hospital care. I hope you enjoy this last episode of Surviving Cardiac Arrest. This one is very much a personal story. Together with Zoe, this was very much an experience of me assisting in this cardiac arrest as part of that chain of survival. But it always helps me to go back and foster these relationships because it really adds value to why we do the job in the first place. I really do hope you enjoy this. I hope you have a good new year. And we look forward to bringing you along on the journey to a deeper dive in a number of topics within 25. Enough for me. Here is Noah and Erran. Noah, could you just maybe walk us through your upbringing? So you're 22 years now. You're in Sydney now. Could you just maybe walk us through just your upbringing and how you came to be where you are?
Well, I have got family on two sides of the world, in Sydney and London. My dad's grew up in London, my mum in Sydney. So I did grow up in London, but I made the bold choice to study at university in Sydney, and I've made the trip over away from my family, which I currently reside. And I'm loving life, but I miss my family and my three younger brothers very much. But yeah, I'm a young boy. I'm making my way through life and living every day to the max.
And so just as what's brought you to Sydney is studying and furthering your own education, could you maybe just speak to where you were in your walk, in your journey in 2016, because you were indeed at school of the day and the event of the cardiac arrest. Could you maybe just set the scene for that day in 2016, and also maybe just even if you could also just speak to any kind of red flags or signs or symptoms you'd started to experience prior to that day?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was actually born with aortic stenosis. My aortic valve was small when I was a kid, but I had a balloon dilatation when I was very young, I think a couple of months old. And ever since then till 16, you know, I was just a regular kid, and I still continue to be. But you know, I had no limitations other than visiting hospital once a week with my my dad over here.
Once a year, it wasn't once a week.
Once a year, sorry, not once a week.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. I basically, you know, I played sports. I played for a football team. I was a very energetic kid, running around, and yeah, I had a lovely life, lovely time with my brothers and my parents. You know, I look very fondly back on my life as a child.
And so, Erran, just up until this point, you're Noah's father. Had you noticed? Was there any sort of warning signs? You said there was yearly checkups. Was everything sort of going well up until that point with his yearly checkups?
Yes. So as Noah said, he was born with this aortic stenosis, and then he was actually born in Sydney, where he is now, and they did do this successful balloon dilatation. Then he was seen in Great Ormond Street once a year, and really they never said anything. They always said it wasn't a normal heart, and there was some leakage they were talking about, but essentially they were happy there wasn't really any issue that they told us about. I think the only thing they might have said was they might do it again at some point, but it wasn't really, he wasn't on any medication, and it didn't restrict him in any way, as he said. So we didn't really think about it, apart from the fact we had to go in once a year. But actually, Noah did tell me, which I maybe forgot to say, that he was, because Noah was a very active boy, and you know, was always running around and jumping around, and but also very into sports. And he was he was doing some running training with another of his good friends who's a very good runner, and he did feel something fairly. No, maybe you can talk about
yes
this.
Well, no, I'd say, you know, I'd always grown up, and I'd always, you know, had some sense in certain moments when I was either doing very intense exercise or in a intense situation, for example. You know, I'd feel my heart on those rare occasions, and I still do. And that was all I knew, so I didn't know to think anything of it. But leading up to that cardiac arrest, I was doing PE GCSE, where we had to do a Cooper test, long endurance running, and I was training. You know, I was running twice a week around the block after school, and then I did go with my friend Tao once to, I think it was Primrose Hill, and in one of those sessions, this might have been 2 weeks before my cardiac arrest, I remember having to stop after about 15 minutes. You know, I felt my heart, and it actually kind of felt something I hadn't felt before. And in that moment, it just all seemed very surreal to me, and I didn't think much of it. But looking back, that was obviously a little bit of a signifier there. Just because I was pushing myself to the absolute max. You know, I've got a sort of drive where I wanted to, you know, I'm not the most naturally fit or athletic person, but I wanted to, you know, do well in my fitness and do well in my exams, obviously. So I was pushing myself, and I think I pushed myself a little bit too far there.
So let's just dig into the Cooper test, actually, because it's interesting. I hadn't heard of it before I had seen an interview with you retrospectively. And so Noah, can you just, for listeners, could you just maybe unpack the Cooper test as to how strenuous it is? Because it's almost akin to a bleep test, maybe, but just maybe even more intense.
Yes, I believe, you know, you don't really have the option to opt out of a Cooper test, whereas in a bleep test, you once you're done, you're done. But the Cooper test essentially is a 4x25 meter, 100-meter square block that you run around as many times as you can for 12 minutes. And that was basically all we did for about 10, 15 weeks of year 11 in PE, because that was what we were going to be tested on as one of our 4 modules in our PE. And, you know, we were each time trying to, you know, it was a competitive sort of thing, because it was a group of about 30 of us, you know, all the boys, sort of laddish culture. And, you know, we were pushing each other and getting those marks, and you always wanted to do better than the last week. And so you just run around, and you go in pairs. And it was quite a competitive, I would say fun, but also a competitive thing. And, it's a real test of fitness and endurance. 12 minutes, you're just running round and round and round. It's not like a 400-meter racetrack. It's much smaller than that. So you basically can become quite mundane going round and round. But yeah, that was what it was. And that's what we did basically every PE lesson.
And Erran, could you maybe just speak to your memory of that day in 2016, maybe just prior to Noah's event?
My dad was pretty ill at that point as well, so we were, I was visiting him, and he was 83 at the time, and that was all going on. So in terms of what Noah was doing, and he was doing PE GCSE, which is why he was doing the training so hard for that. But we didn't know, we weren't aware of anything to do with his heart, and he was revising for his general GCSEs. Pretty weird. Noah said goodbye in the morning as usual, went to school. I went to visit my dad in hospital around, now I can't exactly remember the time that we had, but I got on the way back, which was around midday or something, I got a call. That
it would have been around 12 o'clock, because that's when I had
around midday. I got a call from the school, or from my wife, I think she'd been called, that Noah had collapsed at school. And it was pretty weird. So they couldn't really tell me much more information about actually whether he was alive.
They probably didn't know.
It was probably one of the most terrifying moments in my life. So I rushed to get my wife and get to the car. Luckily, it wasn't too far away. I mean, we were about 25 minutes drive away from the school. So we got in the car and we tried to ring the school. We got through to the school. They couldn't really tell me any information. I think I'm not sure what was going on exactly, but they couldn't tell. I did say, is he breathing? And they couldn't tell me. And so we were driving, to get to school, which took 25 minutes, I think.
Was it you and Mum both in the car?
Yeah, so I'd literally come back from the hospital and it was in the car. And when we got to the school, well, it was pretty terrifying, to be honest. I mean, the amazing thing that happened in terms of his survival and everything is that he was at school doing sport, and he was
couldn't have been a better place to happen, really.
Luckily, there was an incredible sports teacher, Ashley White, who was the guy who really saved his life initially, and then all you guys carried that on. But when I got there, Noah was on the what is that place called? No, where you were training,
the Astro pitch.
The Astro pitch. They got an Astro pitch there. He was lying. He was fitting, I think is the word, which I've never seen anyone do. So that was pretty traumatic to see. So I didn't really. I think you guys were all busy there, So working on him at that point. I can't remember if the helicopter had come in. I think that came in soon after I arrived, or I can't. It's hard. I can't remember exactly the stage of everything, but all I know is, it was a different, the most difficult day of my life, but we had a kind of miraculous result at the end. I can talk more about it if you want, but but that's the initial thing, coming up to where. So it was a complete shock, really, what was going on.
From your perspective, what can you remember prior to the event? So if you just want to see you're running the Cooper test, did you start to get some symptoms? Did you start to feel dizzy? How did it look from your side, Noah?
So as a matter of fact, I don't remember a single thing from that day, which is probably, I assume, not too uncommon. Prior to it happening, it was a regular random Friday 6 years ago in my life. So unlike obviously my dad, I wasn't aware of anything once it started happening, and I don't remember a thing. The last thing I remember prior to it happening was my mum's birthday, which was 2 days before. We went out to some Italian restaurant, I think, and that's probably my last memory prior to the event. And then that's basically it for me.
What I know is that what we were told later is that he was doing the Cooper test, and then he completed it and sat down with one of his friends. I think a friend called Ollie.
Yeah. No, I've been told the whole story. Just from my perspective, I don't remember a thing. But I pretty much know the whole picture. You know, I've had a load of my good friends were there, and obviously Ashley, who helped save my life along with you guys, has told me stuff, and I basically have the whole picture of what happened. And you know, it was it's weird to think about, you know, arguably the most significant thing to happen to me in my life so far in terms of impactful and life-changing happened, and I wasn't even conscious, which is a quite odd thing.
So I don't think it's uncommon to have this, what they call this sort of post-cardiac arrest amnesia, where you can't recall anything. And every sort of cardiac arrest survivor I speak to has the same. There's a complete memory loss of the event. And if I'm right in thinking from your history and from the history, Ashley, Mr. White was speaking about, I think you sat down post Cooper test because you were so acutely tired at that time. And then never really got back up from that event, which
I think I in fact lay down with my friend Ollie, and we both lay down. You know, we were knackered after the 12 minutes, and my teacher, Miss Hoskins, told us to get up. Ollie got up, and I never got up.
Yeah, so interestingly from my perspective, Noah, when I arrived, the other paramedics were certainly there. The fantastic work that Ashley White, that your teacher did, was proof of the start of the chain. As Erran was saying, and yourself, it was fortunate that this event happened at school, so that there was witnesses, so that that Mr. White could jump into action and start to perform bystander CPR once he recognized you're in cardiac arrest. Certainly when I got to you as well, there was still cardiac arrest ongoing. I think you were actually in cardiac arrest for about half an hour. Your heart was quite stubborn at that time, and there was a number of we had to shock your heart a number of times. We had to do afterwards really was just sedate you as well, because there was a little bit of post cardiac arrest agitation, which is not uncommon again. And so just to try and control your as Erran was saying, your any seizure activity, any agitation, any sort of involuntary movements. And then Erran's quite right. We called for the helicopter because what we wanted to do is give you a roadside anesthetic. So put a breathing tube down your neck. So just to help you breathe, just to deeply sedate you and just to get you to the right place. So the HEMS team arrived. I think we promptly got on with giving you an anesthetic and sedating you, but all of which you wouldn't have really been aware of because you were sort of deeply unconscious yourself.
Of course.
Yeah, and at the same time, then I peeled away. I remember very much speaking to Erran, understandably extremely concerned, but then just briefing Erran on the updates and indeed on the successes. So the fact we had your heart beating again, the fact you were making these involuntary movements, which was a great sign to see so early on.
When was that? Was that on the day?
That was on the day. So Erran was with you. He was with me. He was in the back of the ambulance, and so we were sort of briefing him as well as he was looking in on the care, which was I think the best place to be, because then Erran could be directly involved in your care as you moved to hospital. So I believe the HEMS team took you away.
So I just wanted to say one thing, which was before we get on to that next bit, which is as I said, I was driving to school, so I probably took 25 minutes, half an hour to get there. So you were already there. But, Ashley White, I think, had to do CPR for an incredibly long time.
You told me 15 minutes.
I think he was the only guy who knew how to do it properly, and he was the sports teacher. Luckily, he was incredibly fit, and he did a great job, obviously. But there was no defibrillator in the school or anything like that, so he was on his own for. I think it was 17 minutes before the ambulance arrived. I'm not sure who was there first. I think it was a policewoman arrived first, apparently. And in that initial period. I mean, do you know how long? I mean, when you were there, how long was that after the call? I'm just interested to know, because I was told it was about 17 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, it was quite a while actually for myself, because I remember being in South London at the time, so it was a good duration afterwards for myself as a critical care paramedic to arrive, and I remember very much being there after the ambulance, after the first responder, very much after.
Yeah.
So I think
were you the guy who called in the helicopter, and that was your decision once you saw that he was getting through the initial bit, probably?
Yeah, it was the decision. It was the decision on scene, but by a few of us actually, that it was the best course of action actually to get the helicopter team in to both sedate him and indeed put a breathing tube down his throat. And what that did is it allowed us to directly transfer you through to Great Ormond Street, but it also allowed the continuation of care, so continuity of care once you were deeply sedated and anaesthetized with the roadside anesthetic. So it really did help with the transferal and indeed the continuity as we went forwards. So let's just play that out then. So actually you're in Great Ormond Street. They assess you, Noah. In that interim, Noah, what procedures had you done? I think you had a couple of significant surgeries quite early on in your treatment.
Yeah, it was it all happened quite fast from my point of view. Obviously, I was in hospital initially for a couple of weeks, maybe 3, 4. I can't quite remember, but had 2 quite big operations, a month and then another month later. I had an open heart surgery to replace my aortic valve, and then I also had the internal defibrillator put in, which I just got replaced last week, in fact. So yeah, that was quite a process. And from my point of view, the hospital experience wasn't the worst time in my life, because I was kind of, I was on the road to recovery. I had quite a lot of anesthetics and drugs I think I was taking at the time, so I wasn't hurting at all. I was watching movies, and it was quite a soft and slow recovery from my point of view. And I had my family obviously there most of the time, and my friends came to visit, and that basically got me through the hospital.
So Erran, how was it from your perspective through that phase of Noah's journey?
Well, it was literally, as you said, it was a path to recovery that was, every step had to work. So the initial thing was, I kind of had this mindset where it was just minute by minute survival, really. When I got to the school, I found out he was still alive, so that was good. Although we didn't know what kind of state he would be in, And then we got into we had those doctors arrive with the helicopter, and they gave him the best possible care at that moment. We all got into the ambulance. There was a question about where to go, I remember, because Great Ormond Street, where he was being treated up to that point, don't admit emergency. But I managed to get on the phone with I had the doctor, with the some of the contacts, had some contacts there, and we managed to get him in. I think that was probably quite important as well, that we got him there rather than a different hospital, because they knew his case, and obviously it's a great hospital with great doctors. Pardon?
Lovely hospital, nice coffee place opposite.
And then we got in. I remember it was a Friday, and Fridays, we're Jewish family, so it was the Sabbath coming, and actually our rabbi turned up very quickly there, and at that point we didn't know. Noah was in intensive care, and we didn't really know what was going to be happening next, and or whether he'd been, my great fear was obviously, well, that he would survive, but my great fear was whether his brain had been affected and initially we were told by some doctors that it probably had been affected. So all this was incredibly stressful, as you can imagine. I remember there was, I think there was an Arsenal game going on, and Noah's a big Arsenal fan, and I was telling him about it and I didn't know if he could hear me, but I think I felt his hand respond, and I was playing him a bit of music as well, and I thought that was positive, and it was almost like the doctors actually said it was almost miraculous that he came back the way he did, after that kind of event. So I think it took I can't remember when he kind of woke up, but when he did wake up, I remember, I think it was about a day and a half later.
The Sunday morning.
He didn't know where he was, and he tried to run out of the room, which he immediately
thought
fell
I'd been kidnapped. Thought I'd been kidnapped.
But actually, I mean, it was a crazy time. My dad died 3 days later as well, after just a kind of fairly short illness when he was ill in hospital. So it was kind of, let's say it was a very interesting time in my life, a bit too interesting. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy. I remember I had to go to bed. This happened on the 1st of April, Noah's event. The 4th of April, my dad died. The funeral was on the 5th. And I remember I'd been in the hospital with Noah, but I went on the way to my dad's funeral. Noah rang me because he had his phone and he was able to talk. And I had to tell him where I was going. So it was all kind of, because he hadn't realized. So
I don't remember that.
Yeah. So the amazing thing was the care that he got, and it just seemed to be, incrementally very positive, that he was recovering, that he was a bit incoherent in the beginning, and that was partly maybe because of the drugs, partly because of what happened. He couldn't remember things. That was all normal after that kind of event. And but he looked, considering what he'd been through, he looked like he was on the way to recovery, and that that was really hopeful for us. So and not many people have that situation, not people get through it. So it was just stage by step, really. But yeah.
So I remember coming to see you, actually, Noah, and yourself, Erran. I would say, I think it was 3 to 4 days afterwards. Noah, you probably don't remember that because it's
No.
quite hazy. But then I think I came twice or 3 times, actually, just to make sure, things were going in the right direction. And you started to be very much more animated. No,
I remember you coming one of the instances, but by that point I was able to walk, and I had my full memory back of that period. I remember we met downstairs or something, and that was the first time I remember meeting you, in fact. And you had your ambulance gear on, and it was just so surreal, all those moments, meeting Mr. White, and coming to terms with what happened to me took quite a while, because it was so much and so hard to comprehend at that age that I didn't really understand it fully, and I still don't. I'm learning things just from talking to you now and thinking about it.
Yeah, it's such a profound episode. But am I right in thinking, I'll drill into actually how you are physically now, as in whether you do exercise as hard or not. But before we go there, just to talk about Mr. White, because am I right in thinking he got an award indeed for his endeavors on that day?
He did, yeah, and deservedly so. I mean, without him, I don't know where I'd be, but he really took the initiative on that day. No one else could, and you know, it was a hard thing to do, but he did it incredibly and heroically to save my life, which I'll be forever grateful. And I message him on Instagram every now and again, and he'll always remember him, and he'll always be a part of my life.
It's called SADS Lifesaver Award, I think it was, which is it's a organisation that deals with sudden death or potentially people could be saved from that situation, and it's an incredible thing. So yeah, he's an award.
And he's now he's gone to another school now, and he's doing very well, which is.
So Noah, looking back at your at that intense piece of exercise, which then triggered the cardiac arrest, and now you have this implanted defibrillator, which monitors your heart rate. How do you approach exercise now, Noah? What's your mindset now?
Well, it's funny the timing of this interview, because over the last month and a half, I've had a little bit of a for the first time since the cardiac arrest, I've had a little incident where I fainted about a month and a half ago. And because of what has happened to me in the past, and because I now need to be careful, I went to the doctor, and they've detected a little difference in the electrical signals in my heart to the average person. And as a result, I went and I got a loop recorder inserted actually only a few weeks ago. And now I have that alongside the defibrillator. So I have two things inside of me. The defibrillator itself, you know, when I first got it, it was funny. It's like such a weirdly shaped thing to have inside your body, like a sort of block.
You've got an external subcutaneous defibrillator.
It's a subcutaneous, yeah. It's not regular. Most of them go inside the chest, but this one just kind of sticks out because I'm quite a slim lad. So it looks like a big button that you can kind of press, and I'll go on and off on the side of me. But maybe I still need to put on a bit of weight to get that covered up. But it hasn't caused me any discomfort other than I don't really sleep on my left side, which is where it is. I sleep on my right side. And other than that, it's there just in case I need it, which gives me great confidence. And, you know, I've loved exercise, and I continue to love exercise. While I'm here in Australia, I've got really into swimming. I swim every morning. Well, I try to, at least. I haven't done in the winter so far. But, you know, I love exercise, and thankfully I've got this defibrillator, which gives me that sort of breathing room in a way to not worry so much. And I don't really think about, you know, I don't get anxious like some people may do, thanks for this device.
So in my own life, my sister-in-law died of SADS when she was 27, and in a gym actually, and had very much a primary arrhythmia. Again, there was no defibrillator there, and it was a different outcome. Really difficult time for our family, but it changed the dynamics of our family. And you know, I tell my brother that I love him all the time now, and I tell my family that very much more so than I ever did before. Erran, has it changed the dynamic, or indeed has it changed your perspective on life post Noah's event?
I think something like that has to change something in you, because it's such a big event and such a shock, firstly. But then we were incredibly lucky you guys were there, and we just had this chain that led to Noah surviving, and that was miraculous, really. And obviously Noah was able to come back from that, which doesn't always happen as well. But even with that, I suppose you are aware that nothing is certain, or maybe more than you just know that, maybe more than most people, that nothing, you can make plans, but anything can happen. And really in a second, your life can change. So that there's an awareness of that. I mean, because Noah had such a good recovery, life has gone back fairly to normal. I think maybe from what you said about the way you talked to your brother, maybe the family became closer. I think it was very hard for everyone, and for Noah's brothers in the initial stage, because it was such a shock to all of us that his their brother almost died. But we had quite a hard time with some of his brothers who were much younger. They found it difficult to deal with, even though he'd recovered. It was just a difficult event, to process. So it was, the post-family dynamic was tricky, actually, just because everybody was a bit upset or moody, or there was more, I've got 4 boys, and it's the eldest, and it was a busy family already, but it was, I think one of his brothers, Izzy, who was 12 at the time, went into puberty early because of it, we think anyway, and was quite angry about things. Maybe it was just being a teenager, but I think it was a bit more than that. But yes, I think it does change the perspective, and maybe it's brought us closer in many ways as well. And we've been,
absolutely nice.
I was just going to say that we hadn't really had to think about Noah's health. He's been very active, swimming and doing gym stuff, and he's not on any medication at all until very recently, where he fainted, and we made sure that he got that checked out. So again, no one expected what happened. Even though he had a condition from a child, even his doctor, Dr. Yates at Braintree, they didn't expect this outcome, and it wasn't something we were expecting. So, and he also had a Ross operation after that, and as well as the defibrillator. They didn't really know what had caused this, and they still don't know. But in the meantime, life goes on, and he's he's still monitoring, obviously, and he's just had these minor procedures, but anyway, that's enough, I think.
I think it makes you enjoy the good times more, going through a hard time, especially with family and with the people you love. When you go through these things together, it does bring you closer together, and that the meaning in life becomes more apparent, I think, because of how precious it is. Every day is a blessing, and all the good times are just things that we should appreciate and live to them the fullest, because those are what bring us together and bring us closer. There are so many unnecessary stresses in life, little things, especially nowadays with social media, and these things are definitely things that people become quite concerned about. But the real things that are important, like family, your friendships, and the love of life, that allows you to live in a freer way when you go through something hard, like I did, and like we've all done. I think you appreciate, and you appreciate every day, and you really have to give your all, in a sense, to live life to its fullest, and be joyous, and do the most that you can to experience what it has to bring and offer.
So guys, as we're coming into land on the conversation, just a couple more questions. One would be just looking at the skill of CPR, from Erran, from your perspective, and then to you, Noah. How important is this skill to be taught in schools from your perspective?
Oh, from my perspective, well, it obviously saved my son's life. I think it's incredible how, when things happen to the heart, if someone is nearby who knows how to give CPR, they can save a life if they can do it. It's a hard thing to do. It's incredibly physical, and I sometimes I think whether I'd be able to, because I did get the training course, so I need to maybe refresh it, but it's quite hard to step up and be in that situation, and but incredibly, what an incredible result. And if the heart is pumped at that point, very good survive. Whether you survive or you don't survive is often not to do with what happens to your heart, but where you are, or whether someone knows how to restart your heart. So it's incredibly. So I think it's crucial. I think everybody should learn it, have some knowledge of it, and hopefully if it comes to it, if they know if they can save someone's life, it's the most incredible thing.
And Noah, from your perspective, would you like to see sort of CPR delivered more frequently in schools yourself?
I'd like, yes, CPR training would be beneficial, absolutely. It's not something that we expect to ever have to do, but in those rare occasions where it does happen, it can happen anywhere and anytime. So the more people that know how to do it, and the more people that have the capacity to do it, gives a greater probability that lives will be saved, essentially. So please God, most people who learn it don't have to do it, but those specific people who can step up and do it, it's infinitely valuable.
So just the final question as we come into land, if there's any take-home messages that you both like to confer to listeners as they're listening to this, be them paramedics, doctors, nurses, or otherwise. Noah, to you first, and anything you'd like people to take away from this conversation?
Well, I'd firstly like to say, through my experience and my life journey, and how much I've relied on those working in health and hospitals, how grateful I am to all those people, and what an honor it is to do something like that in your life. I've got a great friend of mine, Theo, who's on his way to getting a doctorate, and I think it's such an admirable thing to work in that field where you're saving lives, and it really gives back so much to life and to the people that need it, essentially. And I'd like to thank you, of course, for being there, and everyone. I'm so eternally grateful, as I obviously have to be, for being alive, and that means, I have to just say a massive thank you to everyone, essentially. And I'm in awe of, the nurses, the physicians, the doctors are all incredible. Everyone that I come across. And in terms of just life itself, I think, it's such a beautiful thing, and I'm very lucky to be here, but I don't want to look back, and we have to live life every day as a blessing and a treasure, and, smile as much as you can and say I love you as much as you can, because those things give meaning.
And Erran, from your perspective, being on the other end, is there any takeaways that you'd like listeners to
well, I think Noah's kind of said it already. I think it's amazing what you said, and really all I can say is all you guys in the ambulance service doing, and all the people we encountered in the National Health Service in Great Ormond Street, and later at Barts, you do an incredibly difficult job, and you're probably not paid enough for what you do. That will be definitely not paid, but you the professionalism and the incredible, we just saw it, and it was incredible to see. And well, you save people's lives, that's what you do, and there's nothing better in the world than that, is there? And even though it's a hard thing, but it's an incredible gift that you guys do for people. We try and save lives, and there's a lot of success, which is great, and I'm grateful for it as well. So thank you as well.
Oh, it's an absolute. It's a system that saves a life. So it was, everybody doing their job, including Mr. White, and including the rest of the paramedic team to get you to where you are now. But it actually gives me a lot of joy and pleasure, and that's actually probably one of the best parts of the job, to see Noah in such a healthy young individual with the rest of his life to live. And to that final point, Noah, what are you hoping to do now? What are your aspirations? What are you studying for, and what do you hope to achieve at the end of it?
Well, that's the beauty in it all. You don't necessarily know what your life has to hold in it all, but I have dreams and aspirations. Absolutely. I try to give my all in everything that I do, really, take care and appreciate, the fact that I'm able to go to university and study, and the friendships that I have. Every person has a beauty inside of them, and I think through conversation and through experience, you really get to live it all up. I'm still at uni, and I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do after, but I know it will be something great, and then just wait and see.
Guys, listen, it's an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, and thank you both for your time, your perspectives and your insights, because they're absolutely precious. So thank you.
Thank you. Amazing.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.